The following is a dramatic reading of a tweet posted from the developers of the title Resident Evil Village. Hi everyone, I'm Tomonori Takano, art director on Resident Evil Village. I wanted to use this opportunity to publicly reflect on the outpouring of positivity we've received from our fans on our latest announcement. As a representative of the development team, thank you to all the fans who continue to follow us. Most recently, Lady Dimitrescu and her daughters have received a fair amount of attention, far more than we anticipated. It's great that they're able to take the spotlight as icons of Resident Evil Village. Lady Dimitrescu, especially, has received much fanfare, both domestically and overseas, which has made all of us in the development team extremely happy. I hear her height is something of interest. If you include her hat and her high heels, she's 2.9 meters, approximately 9 feet 6 inches tall. Oh! Alright, I'm gonna need a minute with that one. Hello, welcome to episode 28 of It Sure Is a Podcast. We're getting closer and closer to that big 3-0. And consistently, there's been people listening, so I appreciate the support at the end of the day. Thank you so much. So, there's a lot to unpack with that tweet I just read. And if you, I guess you wouldn't know this, but if you know anything about me, like, tall, stacked Amazon women is where I am at. You know, you go into a grocery store. No, not a grocery store, I'm sorry. You go into the mall, and in the mall, there's always those spots that kids will go to. You go to the toy store, kids go to the game store. I was a kid who was going to the mannequins in the big and tall section for women. Now I'm just imagining little, 8-year-old Brandon, wow. Look at those bazongas! As I'm just standing there at the big and tall for the mannequins. I distinctly remember in our hometown at the mall, there was a mannequin, model that they had for big and tall section for, men and women in a clothing store to put stuff on. Maybe that was where my sexual awakening occurred in regards to tall Amazon women. But dang, 9 feet, 6 inches. That's what high heels, but even at the end of the day, all right, hat and not take the high heels off, she'd probably be 9 feet or 8 foot 9 inches. What? I think that's an interesting direction they're taking it too, because Resident Evil and I have a strange past where Resident Evil, I kind of dropped off with it during whatever happened with 6? 7? No, 7 was the good one. I'm sorry. So Resident Evil 6 and then all its weird offshoots, I dropped off because it was too action focused. It was too just wild. And I love dumb stuff, don't get me wrong. But after playing Resident Evil 4, that kind of teetered on that, but the game was so fun and there was some generally creepy stuff. Yeah, I really liked that, but yeah, this not so much. Now 7, even though some parts of it were still goofy in my eyes, it was still creepy. And especially the route they're taking with Resident Evil 8 or Resident Evil Village, where it's vampires and werewolves. I'm on board for that. Yes. We need more survival horror games like that. Because kind of the zombie thing kind of wore out its welcome. If you want to do a good, scary zombie game, honestly, The only scary zombie games that even come to mind for me are just like the older Resident Evils where it's tank controls. And there's that wonkiness, and that adds to, oh no, like the controls and then the zombies, all this stuff working against each other. Yeah. But I'm still staring at that tweet right now. I kind of want to like print it out and get it like framed and hung down in my basement here because holy crap, that's amazing. 9 foot 6 inches. Wow. Whoo. Man. And I haven't really actually looked too much into it because that's definitely a game that I'm looking forward to that I want to save everything for, right? Resident Evil 7, I was at a time in my life where I was so busy and there was no structure just because of what was going on in my life that I didn't even have time to sit down and play games. So I actually watched an entire playthrough of Resident Evil 7. And then I, came through and I actually played it later on when it was on sale on PlayStation for like $20, but that was with all the DLC and stuff, which love it. Oh, it was so good. And I think all they had to do was they just had to make some puzzles, make one just big open map area that you traveled and could open stuff to, almost like a Metroidvania. Because then playing it again, and I don't usually play games for a second time, but playing it again, I just kind of like ran through there and did a bunch of stuff. It, ran through, did stuff where I would kind of speed run the game in my own way and just see how far I could get, and then I'd upgrade different weapons. I don't know. It was wonderful. And I'm glad they continued in this direction, like with the same style. 9 feet 6 inches. Oof. Oh, Lordy. It's a tall woman. Getting me all hot and bothered. So I literally put in a break because I was just going to talk about this lady and we needed a good segue onto kind of what we're touching on today, which is, man, I miss Dungeons and Dragons. I miss those days. And the only reason I say I miss is because in this world of being an adult, it is very hard to have people have a consistent schedule because our schedules are altering and changing at any given moment, right? We could be sitting here thinking, oh, we're going to do this, this, and this today. And then a giant tanker crashes into your front door and you're just like, well, no, that ain't happening today, I guess. And the thing about it is, that's not far off from what I've had happen to someone I know. They had this dump truck literally crash through their front porch. And they're just like, well, we ain't doing anything today because there's a whole dump truck in my front door. Excuse me. I'm thankful that they're okay and everything's fine. I mean, this is a long time ago. Nothing bad happened, but I was just like, really? So with that, in your minds that, oh man, that could happen at any second that we're alive on this green ball. It's hard to sit down and really have people committed to Dungeons and Dragons. But especially now, I think it would be more popular to do like video calls for D&D and do everything related to that. But there's a missing magic when you don't do it in person. There's a missing just part of it, right? And that's, I think, is the big draw of Dungeons and Dragons and even tabletop games, where the big draw of it is just being in the same room with a human being. None of this social distance stuff, none of that. And I that's important. Don't get me wrong. I'm more complaining about like, okay, this is what's going on in the world and I'm not a fan of it. I want things to go back to normal. I'm not saying everyone go out and go play board games. But, man, board games, they're good. And especially Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, I miss it so. And every group I have been with, something has happened and we had to quit for a while. And then at that point, they contact me and they're like, all right, my man, we just restarting over. The last campaign I played, I was a suit of armor that was full of bees. Like the bees made their hive in the suit of armor, and the bees would like animate this suit of armor. And it was so fun. It was so enjoyable. And I could intimidate people by using bees. And I've even like stung people in our campaign. And the person was like allergic to bees and no one knew it. And then they passed out. So we had to figure out our way to get our information from our quest giver. Which is it's just like goofy stuff like that. And the DM was like, oh, now I got to change this and we got to do that. But that's what's fun, you know? Someone does something like that and then it changes just the entire campaign for everybody. It's fun. It's fun. And a lot of people have a stigma on it that it is satanic and demonic because anyone remember those I guess these were really pushed out by different religious organizations. There was like early 90 or probably the 90s that whole time there would be these videos of like people satanically worshiping gods when they're playing Dungeons and Dragons. And for the longest time as a sheltered youth I thought the same thing. And then I played it and I'm like, "Oh wait, it's literally just a bunch of people using your imaginations." Like what would the difference be if you were to play a video game or to read a book with some, fictional fantasy-esque context, right? What would be the difference of that? Like you're just interacting with it and portraying your own character. Like that's the only thing that's different about it. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't probably people who got really into it and start worshiping these gods, but the thing is like the gods portion of it is related to the world building. So if you choose a class and then you're like, I am a warrior who worships this warrior god, it's more world building. And I think, especially during the 90s, everything that was nerdy was scary. But now everything that's nerdy is trending. So people are like, oh, that's okay. That's fine. No complaints from me. I'm just sitting there like, what? Like, you complain about. I'm not even going to get into that. It's just how times change. And Dungeons and Dragons and nerdy games, which were once unpopular and hated, are now the things that everyone wants to get on board with, which I don't understand, but that's neither here nor there. Sorry, I don't know if you hear this paper movie. I'm looking at paper right now. I have some Sprout designs sitting here and I kind of looked at them and I'm like, what is that? But then I was able to figure out what it was. Sorry, ADHD and me recording in a space that is my studio too, sort of. Which would be great to have my own studio at some point. Just a spot where I could go and like that's the only thing I could do is make art. Because when you have a space that does multiple things, especially for someone with ADHD, you're always going to gravitate to the thing that's going to give the most immediate satisfaction. And what is that? Usually games. Usually games, that's how it rolls, unfortunately. Oh man, I wasted so much time on these things. They're fun though. I've been playing a lot of Muse Dash, which is a fun little microcosm of just a rhythm game. But okay, let's get focused. Let's focus up here. My thoughts on D&D were sparked by me discovering what the heck a Zine was, because Kickstarter has been popping up with all these Zine projects. I'm like, what is a Zine? So let me give you the description of a Zine. Oh, I'm sorry. I said it wrong because I'm an idiot. It's a zine. It's spelled Zine, but it's pronounced zine. What is this nonsense? Is a small circulation, self-published work of original or appropriated texts and images, usually reproduced via a copy machine. Zines are the product of either a single person or a very small group. Okay, so a Zine is a tiny little book. It's kind of like just a little paperback book with staples in it, that is just very specified for one thing, right? And it's usually defined by like 1,000 or fewer copies. So, with that being said, a lot of Kickstarters have been popping up that are these zines, which are these very small, but a lot of them are modeled as like a solo RPG experience, and I've never tried that. Right, every either board game or tabletop RPG or Dungeons and Dragons session, obviously, always had multiple people around it. So, what the heck is this, right? What is a solo RPG? So, let me give you just kind of a rundown to give you an idea of this one I found called The Lighthouse at the edge of the all right, Lighthouse at the end of the edge of the universe. Sorry, I kind of just woke up a little bit ago. All right, Lighthouse at the Edge of the Universe on Kickstarter right now. The Lighthouse is a solo journaling game best played at nighttime before bed or for when you can't sleep. The Lighthouse is about running a lighthouse in space. It is played with a dice, a coin, and a pack of cards. Roll the dice and flip a card to get a prompt. Flip a coin to see how you go about the task. Record your duties, thoughts, and observations. Your notes in the logbook will be a record of your time in the lighthouse and the lighthouse itself. Oh, I see what they're writing with that. Okay, I'm stupid. Please hold. Each night in the lighthouse will be a little different. You may have less tasks to do, or one task that takes a while. You have space to write as many or as little words as you would like. Maybe you can only spare 15 minutes to play, or maybe you have time to sit down and write a long entry. The game is designed to be played over and over as you and the lighthouse evolve, change, and get to know each other. It is reflective and meditative. Each logbook entry begins with your observations of the weather. You and the lighthouse are at the mercy of the weather at the edge, and so mishaps are very likely to happen. Maybe you'll need to fix something, replace a panel, clean up breakage, fill the tea in your fill the tea in your flask. The oil in the lamp will need refilling through the night, and the wick may need to be tended to once you've done that. Sit down and take some time to observe those passing by the lighthouse's balcony. Maybe you'll spot a pod of space whales migrating to the next galaxy, or a spaceship going on its merry way. So that is the pitch for it, the elevator pitch, where it's just kind of this self propelled narrative journey that you take pretty much by yourself. But also, a lot of times, people who worked at lighthouses, it was only them. So, this is an interesting approach. And I'm always for this combination of things, right? Because kind of from the sound of it, what my description would be like something you'd see in an indie game where that game would specifically just have you exploring a lighthouse and the story narrative would be in there. And that's it. That's a game. Boom. Done. Right. This is like kind of bringing that into the real world, but combining it with a role playing game that you'd play like a tabletop. So let me see. The physical zine is currently 24 pages long and measures at 148 by 105 millimeters, and then in parentheses, A6 size. So any of you Poindexters out there know what that means. You know what that means. It will be stapled and will be a small zine. If stretch goals are reached, the zine will be roughly 32 pages long. The cover design is not final and will probably change during revisions. There is a little papercraft cutout of the lighthouse at the end that you can put on your phone light for some tiny ambience, or ambiance if you're fancy when you say it with your pinky out. The zine will be professionally printed on uncoated 150 GSM Mate stock with a 200 GSM cover. These are all way too big words for my dumb brain. And then it just goes through, okay, here's all the, you can get a PDF copy, you can get a physical copy, all this fun stuff here as I scroll through, but this really gets through all the just main little points of it. So let's see what money it has received. The person asked for $209, and I was probably assuming that was just the base to get it printed. It's at 7,000 right now. So it crushed that goal with 6 days to go. I think I'm going to remind me on this. I'm going to keep my eye on this bad boy. There we go. That's interesting. I'm interested to see how that works. Play it just before bed or when he can't sleep. Because you're just kind of creating your own narrative journey within the frame of, before you go to bed, which is super interesting. I mean, I guess the most current trend right now in our world is, people struggling to sleep. I usually I can sleep okay, but some nights I definitely it's one of those nights I know I need melatonin. I usually only pop 2. It's of the higher milligrams. I know people who pop 5 just to sleep. And melatonin, its only purpose is to get you to sleep. Right. It's not something that's going to keep you asleep. It just gets you to sleep. Hopefully you're able to sleep through the night. But the zines are crazy, man. Zines are wild. All right, let me see. Another zine. The Vast in the Dark. I think that's what it is. Yeah, okay, that's what it is. The Vast in the Dark. A zine about exploring dark and alien megastructures of an infinite realm. Let me give you the story pitch for it. Seek the empty, the broken, and dilapidated. It is closer than you think. Search for the uncanny, the hidden and wrong. They are unsettling to you. Observe this spot with your eyes, your hands, and breath. Let it inside you. Whisper so only you may hear. I wish to see the vast and the dark, and fall backward without fear. You are already there. Okay, so that's like the opening little thing you get there. Let's take a look here. The Vast in the Dark is an exploration setting for the world's most popular role-playing game and takes place in a crumbling alien wasteland filled with brutalist megastructure ruins. It includes tools for generating massive areas to explore, as well as unique player options and gameplay changes to keep the focus on player choice and ingenuity. I can't read. And ingenuity over dice rolling and chance. So, what's inside the scene? Well, all right. Non-prep world generation, player options of the vast navigation, inventory, and exhaustion system, optional horror elements, brutalist alien flavor. So what's it look like? Trying to see what it looks like. Because I guess this zine is just a new trend instead of printing a whole book. Man, maybe I should have done this for Briar. No, Briar. Briar is going to be a mammoth of a book, let me tell you. Because I passed over the 200 pages, and with what the story I've been crafting, it's just halfway. We just hit the halfway mark. And a lot of people suggested that I kind of threw the idea to, that they were like, why don't you make it multiple books? And I'm like, no, this is going to be one complete thing. If something takes off and then this becomes a new career or new beneficial hobby, then we'll think about it. But right now, I'm like, this is one and done. Right? That's my mindset. You do it once, we move on to something else. Because, yeah, it's over 200 pages right now, and we just hit halfway. It's the halfway point of my envisioning for it. But that could always change because once I get an editor, once I have some people review it and take things out or put things in, that could also change. So that was another zine. Pronounced zine. But my brain keeps going Zine like Vine. Miss you, Vine. We miss you, baby. So let me see if. Because Kickstarter is a strange platform where most times, I've never had an issue with receiving what I back, right? But there's been a few where something has happened, it got canceled halfway through, or even just it never delivered ever, which was just super interesting because like I would back something and then you just never heard from it again. And I'm sitting there like I still have a project that I'm waiting for. That was, you know what? Okay, since I have the computer up, let's go check that out. Let's go see when's the last time I got that. When's the last time? When did I back it? Oh, you got a password? Please hold for a moment while I put in the secret password that is not my password for everything else on the planet. It was wrong. Turd. It was wrong again, you turd. I'm gonna lose my dang mind. What the fudge? Please hold as I have a mental breakdown. Alright, I figured it out. Sorry for the delay. 2013. That is when I backed something. And nothing. Still haven't gotten it. Now I'm looking, everything else happened. Except for Ashen Rift. With the flip. Deadly Premonition, nor Village Monsters. The Good Life is still happening. Yeah, okay, everything else is still either. Hold on a second. I don't know where that came from. Oh my gosh. Oh. And probably people listening equated that cough to a gunshot. I missed a time where I could cough in public and not look around and be like, did anyone hear me cough? Everyone looking at you like you're some kind of like mass shooter or whatever. Okay. So everything else on here is still being actively worked on. But yeah, that was the only thing that never came through. Yeah. And then there was a bunch that was like unsuccessful pledges. But I guess no, they didn't meet their goal. But if you look at all of them, they were either canceled. Okay, no, some of them were unsuccessful, but a lot were canceled. Just because they either like found a publisher from doing this stuff so they didn't need it anymore, or the one, yeah, he found a publisher. I don't know about anyone else. Yeah, wild stuff. Kickstarter. You kind of take a gamble, but you can tell about the authenticity of the project just based on how they present it. Because there's definitely some projects that you like come across and you're just looking at it and you're like that. No, no, like there's it's just something wrong there. So we went through a lot on Kickstarter and also figured out what the heck a zine was. I'd be interested to see what this zine does, however you put it. But I said I would talk about this if you were on the Twitter. I said I would talk about two things: the height of that lady from Resident Evil 8, and also a Kickstarter title called Sky Climbers, which is very interesting to me, anyways. because what's interesting about it is a combination of a few things. It's a combination of this kind of RPG open world where you build kingdoms and build forts, which obviously there's a crafting element to it, but also monster taming is another piece of the puzzle. And right now it needed 25,000 and it rests at 74,000 something. And I'm not going to go read through all of this for you because you can do it with your own dang eyeballs, or there's, YouTube videos, especially Gym Leader Ed did it. Who's he? But you can build your kingdom. Real time base building. Villagers will spawn in your stronghold, manage game currency and resources for your kingdom. So, like, when the villagers show up, then you can give them tasks. And once you kind of put stuff together, you choose a class. And then from there, you actually build. How do we put it? You build a party of monsters that you can tame in the world. And there's different types of monsters. There's mounts, very uh Pokemon-esque. There we go. My brain was like, what's that game you really like? There's just creatures all over the world that you can tame, and then you can like kind of utilize them to build up your structure. But from what the developers discuss, it is kind of this giant, massive sandbox where they put all this stuff in that they really like. And then from there, they really just say go wild. You can build bases, run towns. Now there is a story component that's being assembled at the time, but especially anyone kind of in this independent scene of making games like this, there has to be a point where you either send it to Kickstarter or gauge interest or popularity through like early access. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The only thing wrong with it is when people do that early access, you purchase the game and they're like, we're going to do this. And then they just quit working on it. Okay. Then you just paid for it paid for, unkept promises. I guess that's the way we would put it. Unkept promises. But from everything I've gathered and I did my background research for Sky Climbers, it definitely is something of interest to me. And it's like, I don't know, monster catching games are just so dang fun to me. Disgusting how much I like them just because they're like these creatures you raise. But also, in a recent interview, Gym Leader Ed does a interview with the developers. They brought up a lot of good ideas and a lot of good points about the industry. Well, where right now, a lot of the games that are being made by people, the independent developers, aren't necessarily just one thing. They are a combination of things. So you just don't get a platformer. You don't just get a Metroidvania. For example, Monster Sanctuary, that's a game where you get a Metroidvania and a monster tamer. This game right here, Sky Climbers, you get yourself a world kind of development crafting game with a monster tamer. Right. And there's not just going to be one thing. And the guy really noted that it was like the technology that we have at our fingertips that we're able to create this stuff that hasn't been able to be created before or in the hands of the people anyways. And I've started to found that a lot of games that are coming out from these smaller independent devs are more polished and more love poured into them, even poured into them, however you want to say it, because it's like kind of like the process I'm doing. I'm like, this is the one and done thing. So if I want to make this, I want to make it good. I want to make it consistent. I want to make it concise. I don't want to just, probably with just how my life works, how everything's going right now. And I'm not even talking about the world state. I'm just talking about like me as a human being and what I am capable of within my life. This is going to be like just the one and done thing. So I want it to be something that's solid, something that's just good. And that's why I see a lot of these people are doing. They're creating such crazy and unique experiences. And we can even compare this to like stuff we're seeing on Kickstarter, like with the zine thing, right? It's so crazy how we're creating these experiences that are a combination of a few things. Those little zines, the booklets, Lighthouse at the Edge of the Universe, the Looking for the Vast in the Dark Butthole. I forgot the name, so that's what I threw in there. That's not me knocking it because it looks interesting. But like we're taking those like kind of like, okay, so what if we made an RPG experience that was kind of role playing, simplified, one person in this tiny little book, and it's a lot of this kind of creative, impromptu nature. That's a combination of a bunch of stuff. I think just everyone's experiencing with, okay, what can I combine here? What can I combine there? And I don't know. I find it super fascinating that we are kind of going into this age now, especially for games and nerdy things. We even compare it to that, where a lot of it is just kind of being based off of just these combinations of a lot of stuff. There's even a game on here that I just backed because, oh my gosh, it strikes my fancy. Because another thing I like other than monster catching games or like those like almost those digital card games. Like I play Hearthstone and I play Gwent I play more of just because I'm a Witcher fanboy. Shout out to my Witcher fanboys. Woo! All five of you apparently, because everyone hates it because you're all Neanderthals. But it's called Clash of Deck. All right, name could use some work, but it functions and it looks a lot like Hearthstone, where you get these creatures, you get these powers, these cards, and you play them like against one other person. Every card has a unique ability, every card allows you to do this and that. So that's kind of like where I'm coming from with all this stuff that I'm just like, man, I really, really like that stuff. And that's just the long story simplified for it. But like on here, deck Clash of Deck is just right up my alley. Yes, it is a combination of the digital card game, trading card game, but just put onto an actual card and actually just a real game that you can hold in your hands. And see, that's another kind of combination that you get with it. So I don't know. I don't really know the point I was trying to make with Clash of Deck. It kind of popped into my head just because I was looking at it, but it's just a combination of a bunch of different things. People who are really passionate and really focused on what they want to make. And a lot of these people, which gives me such determination, are people like, no, I never made a game before. I never designed this before, but I just really wanted to. So I sat down the time and I made sure it happened. I put in the effort. I made it work regardless of what was going to happen. And it takes years and years. But if you have an idea that you work with for years and years, that's when you know you have something that's truly special. That's when you know you got something that, is going to be something that someone wants to play. There's also a lot of times when people are developing games like this or products like this, it's something they would like to play. And even though everyone is different on this beautiful green ball, a lot of people have those niche categories of, I would like to play that. I would like to experience that. And I think right now, especially in the realm of gaming, and that includes like tabletop games and stuff, we're seeing a lot of this come up. We're just seeing a lot of it kind of happen, which is exciting. It's very exciting. It's a very exciting time to be one of those creative people who are creative. I guess if that is the best way to put it. Ah, man. What a bunch of stuff that just fell out of my mouth, right? Trying to think anything I talked about last episode. I finished Well, I was like on the cusp of finishing that Cannon Busters. Like I said, it's a fun time. Just give it a watch if you're on Netflix and you are bored. Um, I recently finished another audiobook. I took a break from the Witcher series just because I've been plowing through 4 books. And I'm like, I need a break. I just finished listening to uh Pilgrim on Audible. And Pilgrim's a very good book. At first, I was a little hesitant and a little off put just how it opens, but once you get into it, that's when you're like, oh, okay, this is legitimate. This is a good book. Kind of combines The Witcher and a little bit of John Wick. That's how they promote it. But it's an audible only, which is interesting. So will it never get a print? Because usually what I do whenever I finish an audiobook, I will purchase the print because I have Amazon Prime, so I just get free tokens to spend on books. And every month you get a new one, and I'm still catching up on all the books I have, and it's just one of those things where I'm like, okay, I still want to support the industry because I do like reading. I actually used to read quite a bit back in the day. But with just the age of me running around and for my job, I got to hop in the vehicle and drive all over the region. Like, I need something I can listen to. And I'm so engaged and focused when I'm reading. And I will literally like find myself taking long ways home just so I can listen a little bit more. And then I bring it in the house and I'll listen a little bit. But then at the same time, everything in the house is moving around and stuff's happening. And it's just a lot of, how do I put it? It's just a lot of just noise. And I don't really live in a place where it is quiet at any given time, right now, anyway. Eventually, I'll hope to get to that point. But I've also been really debating on going the route of, how do I put it? Going the route of being very, very, very minimalistic, I guess. So I'm looking around here, and there is some stuff that is in relation to what I wish to do in the future, which I may have touched on a few times in the past, which was like, develop, not develop, open my own business, which at my current job, I have to do a certain amount of time before I can even be considered to do that, which is strange. It's like an internship after an internship, but whatever. I get paid for this one at least. And a lot of this stuff does apply to that. So it's ready to go, but then there's just a lot of stuff. Anyone else find yourself just collecting stuff? In me and my silly gamer brain, I really think I've narrowed it down to a nostalgia kind of mindset we have. Like, do you remember as we little lads and we little ladesses where we were so excited and we were so enveloped in our toys, and then that grew up into we were so focused on our games and we would spend every waking minute with our new game that we got and we were so excited. And then when you're an adult, that changes. And I think we always like to buy into new experiences. We always like to drop our coin on wild purchases because what we're chasing is that feeling we had when we were a kid, that little nostalgia burst of something you sit down and you play for hours and you stay up way too late and you are tired at work, but you're like, man, I had a fun time doing that. And I think with just so much being put out by people at once, that we kind of get overwhelmed and we're like, oh, this didn't give me that satisfaction. Let's go to the next thing. And this isn't anything bad. No, I'm not saying you're a bad person for purchasing games or purchasing things because that's what I do too. I buy stupid stuff. But like sitting back and really looking at it, I was just kind of like, I think that's where my mindset is. I'm chasing something. And there's still things I want to support. There's still things I want to play in the future. Don't get me wrong. But it's just that chase, I think. And I think taking a step back and really just minimizing what I have and minimizing all this extra crap I have, I think would be beneficial to me just to sit back and realize, like, what do I have? What is nice and important? Excuse me. I just hiccuped and burped at the same time and I feel gross. Like, what is that thing that drives me that makes me want to, spend time with something? I think I really have to consider that. And with that being said, dropping that really kind of depressing thought on your guys' little beautiful ears, I appreciate the support. I appreciate the listen. I love you guys. Stay safe out there. Hey, maybe go on to some game store, whatever you have, or Steam or GOG or even Kickstarter. Maybe support someone who's doing a very small independent thing if you're able to. You got to take care of you first. Maybe do that this week. Okay. Love you guys. Take care. She's also 9 feet 6 inches. Step on me, mommy.